Shall we sit here?
Yes,
please.
On the front.
On the front. Yes, better on the front. Okay.
Okay. I think. Please sit for now.
Ga je kijken of die microfoons beeld of weet? Well, maybe we can do it. Can we do it without a microphone?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Well, welcome very much, Oscar, to the Netherlands. Very welcome here. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to meet you. I wish I could have shaken your hand in your beautiful country, Switzerland, later this week, but unfortunately that was well, forbidden to do so. So we have still a lot of things to work for politically, both in Switzerland and in Holland. Oui. But once again, I'm very proud to have you here as my guest, and I hope to be your guest later. And maybe I'll give you the floor to say some words, and you allow me then to react on what you said.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, I'll do it in French and in German, so they can use it in France and then in Germany. Alors, cher Gert Wilders, j'espère que tu comprends un peu le français.
Un petit peu.
Un petit peu. Mesdames et messieurs des médias, d'abord, je voudrais exprimer toute mon admiration pour le courage exemplaire dont fait preuve Gert Wilders dans son combat contre l'intégrisme islamique. Je voudrais également dire mes regrets de n'avoir pas pu organiser la conférence prévue dans ma commune à cause d'un président socialiste qui a cédé à la peur devant une simple demande de quelques islamistes d'organiser une manifestation pacifique et qui, en annulant le contrat de location de la salle, a violé le droit à la liberté d'expression et de réunion inscrit dans la Constitution suisse. Je suis donc venu à La Haye pour démontrer que l'on peut bien nous priver, Gert et moi, de salle ou d'un auditoire, mais que personne ne pourra nous empêcher de nous rencontrer, de partager nos points de vue et d'unir nos forces pour combattre la doctrine liberticide de l'islam. Puisque Gert Wilders n'a pas pu venir à la montagne, c'est la montagne qui aujourd'hui vient à lui. Ce que les autorités nous disent de plus en plus souvent se résume dans la phrase « Taisez-vous, ce sera plus sûr pour tout le monde ». Ainsi, les esprits critiques, anticorps essentiels d'une société, sont neutralisés. La menace et la violence triomphent. L'État de droit n'étant plus en mesure de défendre les principes fondamentaux, la situation rappelle de plus en plus celle de la République de Weimar. Faut-il vraiment que l'histoire se répète et que par la lâcheté de nos autorités, nous fassions le lit d'un nouveau totalitarisme? Quoi qu'il en soit, je puis vous assurer que Gert Wilders viendra un jour en Suisse, et je sais déjà comment m'y prendre pour que ça ne puisse pas être évité. On va trouver un moyen, faites-moi confiance. Si j'accepte d'apparaître à côté de cet homme accusé en justice de délit de vérité et condamné à mort par les intégristes musulmans qui le salissent, c'est qu'au contraire des médias, qui justement le discréditent pour brouiller son message, j'ai attentivement écouté et lu ce qu'il explique depuis des années. Je n'ai jamais lu de sa part une attaque sur les musulmans en tant que personne. Son unique cible est le dogme islamique, dont les musulmans sont les premières victimes d'ailleurs. Il s'inquiète de voir la société hollandaise être prise en otage par une idéologie qui, peu à peu, remet en question les fondements du siècle des Lumières et de l'état de droit. Et il condamne l'augmentation des actes de violence contre les femmes, les juifs, les homosexuels et les musulmans se convertissant à une autre religion ou se laïcisant. Ces inquiétudes sont également les miennes, ces critiques également. Ne pas s'ériger contre ces dérives, c'est faire preuve de lâcheté et d'hypocrisie, deux attitudes qui invitent la barbarie à se réinstaller en Europe. Un troisième volet qui me tient à cœur, très personnellement, et c'est la raison pour laquelle je tourne assez souvent en Europe, c'est d'esquisser pour l'Europe un modèle de gouvernance appelé à remplacer l'Union européenne actuelle dont les jours sont comptés. Il suffit d'attendre la prochaine crise financière et on verra que ce sera chacun pour soi et ce sera très difficile à sauver. À ce système dépassé, bureaucratique, centralisateur et antidémocratique, j'oppose une confédération d'États européens, une Europe des nations libres et souveraines, construite depuis la base de la société par des citoyens responsables. Dans une Europe de ce type, les citoyens seront directement impliqués dans la gestion des affaires publiques par la démocratie directe. Voilà pourquoi je sillonne l'Europe, voilà pourquoi je viens aujourd'hui en Hollande discuter avec Geert Wilders, parce que nous aurons, j'espère, une possibilité ensuite d'échanger, au point de vue de discuter longuement. Et j'espère que notre échange qui suivra nous permettra d'avancer également dans ce domaine. Voilà un peu esquisser ma position en français. Jetzt mache ich das nochmal auf Deutsch, dann haben die deutschen Medien auch was. PI besonders da hinten. Hallo, Michael. Hallo. Lieber Geert Wilders, meine Damen und Herren der Medien, also zuerst möchte ich Geert Wilders meine Bewunderung für den großen Mut aussprechen, den er in seinem Kampf gegen den islamischen Fundamentalismus tagtäglich unter Beweis stellt. Ich möchte mein Bedauern darüber äußern, dass die geplante Konferenz in meiner Heimatgemeinde abgesagt werden musste, weil unser sozialistischer Gemeindepräsident aus Angst vor der Anfrage einiger Islamisten, eine friedliche Demonstration zu organisieren, das von der Schweizer Verfassung verbriefte Recht auf freie Meinungsäußerung mit Füßen getreten hat. Wenn ich heute nach Den Haag gekommen bin, dann nur, um den Antidemokraten zu zeigen, dass man Geert und mir wohl Säle und ein Publikum vorenthalten kann, dass uns aber nichts daran zu hindern vermag, uns zu begegnen, Ideen auszutauschen und unsere Kräfte im Hinblick auf den Kampf gegen die totalitäre Doktrin des Islam zu bündeln. Da Geert Wilders nicht zum Berg kommen konnte, kommt also heute der Berg zu ihm. Was unsere angepassten Politiker uns immer öfter sagen, lässt sich mit dem Satz zusammenfassen: Schweigt, das ist für alle sicherer. So werden kritische Geister, welche die lebensnotwendigen Antikörper der Gesellschaft darstellen, neutralisiert. Drohungen und Gewalt triumphieren, der Rechtsstaat ist nicht mehr in der Lage, seine Grundprinzipien zu verteidigen, Europa gleicht immer mehr der Weimarer Republik. Muss sich die Geschichte wirklich wiederholen, muss die Feigheit unserer Regierenden einem neuen Totalitarismus den Weg ebnen. Wie dem auch sei, in Zukunft wird Geert Wilders ganz sicher in die Schweiz kommen, und ich weiß schon, wie ich es anstelle, damit es dann nicht verhindert werden kann. Das will ich noch organisieren. Wenn ich heute neben einem Mann auftrete, der vor Gericht gestellt wurde, weil er einfach nur die Wahrheit sagte und der von den Islamisten zum Tode verurteilt wurde, dann nur, weil ich im Gegensatz zu den ihnen verunglimpfenden Medien genau gelesen und gehört habe, was seine Nachricht ist. Er greift die Moslems nie als Personen an, sein Ziel ist einzig und allein das islamische Dogma, dessen erste Opfer die Moslems ja selber sind. Er ist besorgt zu sehen, wie die holländische Gesellschaft immer mehr von einer Ideologie unter Druck gesetzt wird, die allmählich die Grundlagen der Aufklärung und des Rechtsstaates in Frage stellt. Er verurteilt die Zunahme der Gewaltakte gewisser islamischer Fanatiker gegen Frauen, Juden, Homosexuelle, säkulare Moslems oder Moslems, die sich vom Islam abwenden. Seine Besorgnisse sind auch die meinen, ebenfalls seine Kritik. Nicht gegen diese Missstände antreten zu wollen, zeugt von Feigheit und Scheinheiligkeit, zwei Einstellungen, die der Barbarei die Türen zu Europa öffnen. Der dritte Themenbereich, der mir am Herzen liegt, ist der Wille, für das Europa der Zukunft ein Gesellschaftsmodell zu entwerfen, das die heutige EU, deren Tage gezählt sind, ersetzen soll. Diesem überholten, bürokratischen, zentralisierten und antidemokratischen Modell stelle ich eine europäische Konföderation der freien und souveränen europäischen Staaten gegenüber, die auf der Basis der Gesellschaft aufgebaut ist, den selbstverantwortlichen Bürgern. In einem solchen Europa werden die Bürger durch die direkte Demokratie in die politischen Entscheidungsprozesse einbezogen. Darum reise ich durch Europa, darum komme ich heute auch nach Holland, um mit Geert Wilders zu diskutieren. Vielleicht wird sich aus unserem Austausch in dieser Hinsicht auch etwas ergeben. Das wäre also jetzt meine Nachricht gewesen auf Deutsch, als Reaktion auf die unmögliche Situation, in die ich gestellt wurde. Ich lade einen Parlamentarier ein, einen gewählten Volksvertreter. Der Saal wird zur Verfügung gestellt, der Name des Konferenciers war bekannt und man macht dann plötzlich eine Rückwendung und man sagt den Saal ab. Ich meine, das ist eigentlich eines Landes, das sich demokratisch nennt und frei, wie die Schweiz, ist das unwürdig. Und es tut mir wirklich leid, ich fühle mich da ein bisschen schlecht in dieser Situation, aber deshalb habe ich mir gesagt, nun gut, ich komme nach Holland, dann treffen wir uns wenigstens, machen Bekanntschaft und naja, dann haben wir wenigstens den Beweis erbracht, dass man uns doch nicht hindern kann, uns zu begegnen.
Genau, well, Dankeschön, Oscar. I will answer in English, then we have had three languages.
Right.
I will not do it in Dutch, but in English. Thank you for your, once again, your presence and your visit, which is an honor for me, and thank you for your most kind words. I'm very happy once again that Oscar Freysinger is a guest of me here in the Dutch Parliament today. He's not only a member of Parliament of the largest party of the Swiss Parliament, but he's also, as I believe, a very courageous man. A few years ago, not everybody perhaps in Holland reminds that, he was a victim of an arson attack and his enemies tried to burn down his house, and it proves how dangerous it is to criticize Islam, even in Switzerland. And Oscar, but also other Swiss Islam critics, deserves our support. And that is why, when a few months ago Oscar invited me very kindly to come to Switzerland to speak and to discuss in Switzerland the subject of multiculturalism and of Islamization, I was very proud and glad to accept his invitation. I also wanted to meet the man who 2 years ago was the driving force behind the Swiss minaret referendum. As we all know, in November 2009, on your initiative, Oscar, over 57% of the Swiss voters banned the building of new minarets in Switzerland. And I was very proud of that. And we envy Switzerland for its system of direct democracy, which allows the Swiss people to have a direct say of its own fate. And immediately after the Swiss referendum against the minarets, I proposed here in the Kingdom of the Netherlands that we would also hold a similar referendum. And like in Switzerland, I believe that the majority of the Dutch people also oppose these symbols of Islamic domination. However, unfortunately, Oscar, we were denied such a referendum. Indeed, we are hardly ever granted a right to hold a referendum in the Netherlands. And whenever we are allowed to have a referendum, such as the one in 2005 on the European Constitution, the ruling establishment, the ruling elite simply disregarded the results and pushes through its own projects anyway. Unfortunately, even in Switzerland, traditional Western freedoms are being restricted as a result of Islamization. Everybody perhaps remembers that 2 years ago, the socialist government in Great Britain banned me from entering the United Kingdom, where I had been invited to speak in the House of Lords on the invitation of another colleague, a member of Parliament. And I, at that time, successfully appealed against the decision, and a few months later, the Socialist Party was also driven from power. I don't know if the two are interconnected, but I hope at least it had a little effect. 2 weeks ago, the socialist mayor of Saint-Vierze banned me from speaking in the municipal hall of its own town because, as Oscar said, leftish, perhaps even Islamic groups threatened and to demonstrate against my coming to Switzerland. And when a private conference room was found in Sion, demonstrators, again threatening violence, also made that venue impossible. And that is a very sad thing indeed. And it shows, unfortunately, that it has become sometimes impossible, even in Switzerland, to openly and freely discuss the issue of immigration and Islamization. And the fact that we are being treated almost as elected politicians, that we are almost treated as criminals for telling the truth, must, however, not deter us. And I will, and I'm sure Oscar never will, refrain from speaking the truth. That's why we are elected. That's why we are politicians. We want to speak the truth. And I will speak out, even if they have to drag me to 500 courts and threaten to jail me for 1,000 years. The truth will always be the only thing that we should aim for. And our opponents, whether it's in Switzerland, whether it's in Holland, whether it's in other parts of the world, at the end of the day, they will not win. Legal prosecutions, threats, violence, will not force us into submission. And I have accepted Oscar's invitation to come. Of course, like he said, he has to find a way how to do it, but to come later this year, I hope, to Switzerland and to be able to discuss the issue that Oscar invited me for in the first place. Because I believe that it's our duty to fight for the preservation of our liberties, and especially the most important of that liberties, which is the freedom of speech and the right to speak the truth. And I'm happy to be able to do this side by side with courageous politicians such as Oscar certainly is. Once again, thank you, Oscar, for coming to The Hague today, so that together we can make a point that we will not give in, we will actually never give in, and that we are determined to win the battle for freedom in Switzerland, in the Netherlands, and in other parts of the world. We are the men of the West. No one will silence us, and I'm happy that you're here, and I'm looking forward to come to Switzerland later this year.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Well, maybe now, if there are any questions from the press?
Yes, Richard Verly from the Swiss Daily Le Temps. A question for you, Mr. Wilders. You mentioned the Swiss referendum on the minaret. Apparently, you clearly regret the fact that it's not possible to hold one here in the Netherlands. Are you going to push eventually to have one referenda on such a question? And would you appeal for other referenda on the same question in other countries in Europe?
Yes, I believe that we should have such a referendum as Oscar initiated in Switzerland in all the countries of the European Union. I think it would be, maybe not everywhere, but certainly in Holland, I believe that the result would be not much different than it would be in Switzerland. And for that reason, the Dutch elite doesn't want to give in to a referendum because they are afraid of the outcome. Once again, I gave the example of the European Constitution, where it was not initiated by the government, but at that time in Holland it was initiated by the Dutch Parliament. And while 2 out of 3 parliamentarians at that time were in favor of the European Constitution, 2 out of the 3 Dutch voters voted against the European Constitution. And at the end of the day, as you know, it was amended by 1.7% or something like that, and it was enacted anyway. Will I fight for it? Well, I did. I put forward a motion to have a referenda like this in Holland, and it was rejected. And we are now, fortunately, in a position that we are giving support to a minority government, a government that would not exist without our support. So it gave us more leverage and influence in Holland. But I have to admit that even last year when we negotiated about referenda, that the 2 parties that we are supporting today in the coalition would not hear of it, would not dream of it. So I was unfortunately not successful to push it through, but it's on our program and we will keep fighting for it. And when there are important issues, we will use the instrument of initiative legislation to put forward to try to get a majority anyway for such an excellent initiative that Oscar took in Switzerland.
If I may just have a follow-up, because right now, as you know, the Lisbon Treaty provides for the possibility of popular initiative. Is it something you're thinking of? As your country is a member of the EU, which is not the case for Switzerland.
But I think there are, which is true, the new treaty, Lisbon Treaty, gives that possibility. You have to have, in several countries, I believe 1 million votes, a lot of votes. There are some rules about it, but it gives an opportunity indeed to start such a referendum, whether it's about minarets, whether it's about the European Union, whether it's about Greece. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I'm sure that there are many similar parties like Oscar's party and my party that would support such initiatives.
So a referendum is a no-go, but you can also come with your own
Sure.
initiative. You also said in the past that Sietse Flutsma is coming with one. Is that still the case?
Yes, we are working on several initiatives, by the way, but the one of the minarets is certainly one of them. And as you know, we don't have any legislation today in the Netherlands, which makes it more complicated in a way that we first have, like parliamentary parties did, as you know, with the European Constitution referendum. We have to start a temporary law for the referendum, and when that law is enacted, you can use it for a certain issue. So it's not that we have some kind of basic law for referenda, and we can make an initiative which is not easy, but it does take a long time. You have to change the law also for the referenda. And there are, as you know, several ways to put forward a referenda. And one, you have to change the constitution, that takes a long time in the Netherlands, and others you cannot. Then it's not binding, but still we believe that the government will not reject, even if it's not binding, if a majority of the people would vote in favor of it. So yes, we are working on that indeed.
Yes, a question for both of you. So it's the first time you meet. Does that mean it's going to be the first start of something bigger, something that will have you together, but not just Switzerland and the Netherlands, but also France, for the French press, and all the countries in Europe, to have Oscar idea is it to come out of the European Union and form a coalition with all these parties, or is it something different? What is your vision?
Okay, it's the first meeting now. We have first to decide what we will do with that. I don't know him very well. I saw only what is on the internet about him, and maybe it's the same for him. So we have first to know each other on a human basis, and to have some confidence one in the other. That is only possible if we get to know each other. That was what the others try to avoid. They avoid all the time. They try to avoid that we can speak together because they want to isolate us. And so when I come to Holland or to another country, I'm discredited. And if the other one comes to me in Switzerland, he is discredited, and one is discredited with the other. It's always this play with it, is joke. And so the first thing now is to discuss. Afterwards, we have some time to discuss together and to see what possibilities we have to collaborate in the future against different subjects. But I think one thing I have understood now in listening to Geert and what I heard about him in the internet, we are both convinced that the way the EU is functioning now, it's not very democratic. It's a centralistic, bureaucratic system. And there's better, the European people deserve better than a system like that. And it's possible, maybe, to change this. And this system is the reason why Islam can continue to progress, because there's no weapon against it. You can't do anything. In Switzerland we could, through the direct democracy. And so maybe in that direction there's something to do.
Well, I agree with what Oscar says. We are not married yet, but it's a first date, and I like it. I like it.
Intend to have children.
Who knows? No, but certainly I share what Oscar is saying. It is strengthening the issue because everything that, as I know, Oscar and his party and my party and similar parties, what we are fighting for, whether it's the freedom of speech or the European elite and the lack of freedom of speech and the Islamization and the multicultural society, are not only domestic issues. They don't stop at the border of Holland or Switzerland or Denmark. So if we in some way could strengthen one another, it would be, everybody would be a beneficiary of that. And I can learn a lot of Switzerland. As a matter of fact, what is happening to Europe and Greece today, I'm more jealous every day about the position of Switzerland not being a member of the European Union. So we can learn from one another. And I think that with such meetings, and I also share his view that if you go somewhere or you plan to go somewhere, that there is a lot of demonization by the elite, and often also, unfortunately, I have to say, even though our friends of the press are present, also by a lot of reporters, to make it look like total idiots or xenophobes or crazy people or violent people are meeting one another, which is all not the case. So I'm very happy to also be able to talk to Oscar later today, and I'm confident that we share a lot of views, and that we will find a way, maybe not to get married, but to work together more than we did before.
As far as I know, you'll meet in September again. What is the reason of this meeting? Is that the honeymoon, or what is it?
I never should have said it.
No, it will stick on us. But in September, something in doing. It's not now exactly known in all details, but I think in Berlin it will be a great meeting, and I think you will attend this meeting, and I will do it too, and there will be René Stadtkowitz, and maybe that meeting could be the beginning of something new, but that has all to be prepared now. It's rather vague. We have only the date for the moment, and the rest must be prepared.
Yeah, two questions precisely. What are we seeing today? Is it the beginning of a European-wide movement, anti-Islam movement that you want to push up? That's the first question. And the second question, beside Islam, what are the other subjects you want to discuss and you believe you have common position on?
Why do you say white Europe?
No,
I
wide, large, wide, W-I-D.
I like
no, not wide.
It's not a problem.
No, wide.
Wide. Yes, it's to think it over before it happens. I think this European Union can't last forever, because it's not a model which people can identify with. They have a problem. They feel betrayed by the politicians. They feel they have no power to determine their destiny and so on. And so we have to work forwards to another model, another society model. And I think the Swiss model is an example. It's working. And it gives the people real power, real strength. People can decide all the time about every subject. If the people couldn't decide in Switzerland, it's a long time we would be a member of the the European Union. Because the people can decide. That doesn't happen. If you let the parliament decide it, then we're a member of the European Union tomorrow. Only now, in front of the elections, they do as they wouldn't join the European Union. But it's only for the elections. After the elections, then they work again to betray, in fact, what they promised the people before. That's a model which is important. I feel a strong pressure now from the European Union, which is put onto Switzerland. They don't like, the European elites don't like these free people there in the middle of Europe, in the heart of Europe, who decide for themselves what they want for politics and so on. It's a model they find annoying, and it's a picture in the mirror. We show them, hey, it could be like that. And so they make pressure on Switzerland. They want this courier system to disappear because it's a concurrence. And I feel this pressure in Switzerland all the time. And I said to myself, okay, if you make pressure on us, so I will go to everywhere in the European Union and try to explain how our system functions, how the direct democracy works, and to try to find some people like Gerd Wilders or others who want to change the way they are handling things in their country. And if this is a success, then the pressure on Switzerland will diminish.
Well, yes, the question you asked me is, what should we talk about? What should be the issues? And of course, Islam is an important issue, but it's not the only issue that is important. I think what Oscar rightfully said about Europe, I believe I was speaking in Rome, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. I was fortunately allowed to enter Italy. And I spoke in Rome, and I spoke about the lack of and the urge to go back to the union states, to the nation states, I should say. And the European experiment is exactly what makes people be aware of the loss of their own national identity. And they go up in some kind of European organization, the European Union, and this is one of the problems, because if you go away, which is happening since 1957, it's going away more because the European is enlarged, it has more powers, it has on every issue, it has even it is more influential to the Dutch laws than our domestic parliament. The more power you give to the European Union, the more lack of identity you have. This is the solution for the multiculturalists and for the cultural relativists. This is what they want. This is what they seek. And if we want to make sure that people know who they are, what culture they adhere to, what they are coming from, you need to go back to the nation state and to everything that goes together with it. Which also means that the referenda, indeed I'm happy about, like you said before, the European possibility to have a referendum, but I would be even more happy, like in Switzerland, if the Dutch people could decide for themselves what they want to do and not Brussels or Strasbourg. So this whole issue of nation state, this whole issue of the European Union, and the issue of identity, of multiculturalism, of cultural relativism is something that I believe many parties of us share a lot of views. Islam is one of the issues, direct democracy are issues. I think there are many issues that all come back to one of the, at least for me, one of the basic thoughts, which is who are we not, what are we fighting against, and what are we fighting for? And I believe that we see now a process that we are losing our identity, we are losing our freedoms, we are not allowed to talk about immigration or minarets or Islamization. And there is an enormous gap, and the gap is growing between this political elite and the Vox Populi. And parties like our parties, and certainly direct democracy as in Switzerland, can, at the end of the day, narrow that gap. And if some cooperation between similar parties can be at least some kind of incentive to manage that, then it's worth working for. Yeah.
A question to both of you. In Europe, we see a lot of the media transporting mainstream opinions. A lot of them ignore the danger of Islam, and they don't see that there's a growing Islamization. And how important is, in your opinion, the internet for the freedom of speech and the transporting of these dangers? Maybe first, yeah?
Yes, well, your own internet, your own Painet, if I pronounce it correctly, is an example about how important it is, because the press, certainly the public press, and I thought when I was still naive a long time ago that it was only the case in Holland, but it's not true. After I travel all over the world, you see that it's the same. It's not often unbiased, well, like in my visit in Switzerland or anywhere else, you see that it's been taken from one point of view only. I'm very happy. I'm now in the process that I'm negotiating, maybe I should not say it, the Dutch press here, with two other parties to cut the budget for 200 million euros for the Dutch public TV at the time. Which is a good thing, but not to joke about it too much. I believe that internet, free internet, unbiased internet, also, I visited Canada a few weeks ago, and there was, for the first time, a new television station, which was something like Fox News, but then for the first time in Canada. And you see at that time, when it happens, when such a television station comes, that are not ruled by the elite or by the leftists or intellectuals or whatever you might call them, how popular they become in a very short time. How much leverage there is, how much people are eager to listen, to read such a press, or to listen to such a talk-in radio, or to look at such a television, or to view internet sites like PNet. So I think it's very, very important to work on that. We are dependent on it to have some kind of normal perspective of what we are doing, what we are fighting for, we are not helped often by the media.
Die Frage werde ich jetzt auf Deutsch beantworten, weil da reicht vielleicht mein Englisch nicht aus. Das ist etwas komplexer. Also wir sind, ich glaube, dass die Europäische Union so langsam eine UdSSR ohne Gulag wird. So in dem Stil. Wir haben so, das 1984 von George Orwell wird 1:1 durchgesetzt jetzt. Das bedeutet, man tötet ja nicht mehr Menschen, man tötet ihr Bild. Das Bild von Geert Wilders, mit dem Bild zerstört man ihn, mit dem Bild zerstört man mich. Wenn ich zu ihm komme, dann empfängt er einen Rechtsextremisten. Wenn er zu mir kommt, dann empfange ich einen Rechtsextremisten. Und dann sagen uns die Medien, macht es Ihnen denn nichts aus, mit diesem Rechtsextremisten zusammenzukommen? Ja, dann sage ich, ja, gleich und gleich gesellt sich gern. Sie machen ja dasselbe mit mir. Also ich meine, der Witz ist schon längst bekannt, aber so funktioniert das. Das Bild ist also wichtig. Ich spiele jetzt Katz und Maus seit 11 Jahren mit den Medien. Okay, ich komme irgendwie immer doch auf meine Kosten. Aber es ist ein sehr schwieriges Spiel und man kontrolliert natürlich nur teilweise, was dann passiert. Wenn aber jetzt ein Medium erscheint, und das ist der Grund, warum Jean-Robin hier ist, warum du hier bist, ich habe jetzt gemerkt, mit dem Internet hat man eine Plattform, die ist viel schwieriger zu manipulieren. Da herrscht noch ein Freiraum. Irgendwie unter der Oberfläche der offiziellen Medien entsteht da eine Plattform, die ist noch frei und da kann man dann noch wirklich eine Debatte ausführen, wie es sich gehört. Und sich auch frei ausdrücken, ohne dass da irgendwie zensiert wird, ohne dass da irgendwie das Bild verzerrt wird. Darum ist Internet, das ist jetzt ein Mittel, das ist eine Waffe gegen dieses totalitäre Gehabe. Und das müssen wir immer besser in den Griff bekommen und für unsere Zwecke verwenden, ganz sicher.
You said something about common goals before, but I do not totally understand how can you benefit from each other. I mean, you have parties in your own country. I can see that you have goals that are the same, but how can you benefit from each other?
The way of collaboration will be we must define it. That's just the reason why we met today and we'll discuss it. How can one help the other? But if you're not alone fighting for the same aim, then you're stronger. If you're alone in the desert, it's very difficult. But if you see there are a lot of people around thinking the same as we do, and you find it everywhere in other countries, at least it will be a civil movement, and it will change maybe things in Europe. I hope this.
And it also, if I may add, it will make it more difficult for the elite or the press to label us as crazy people, because we represent normal people. My party is today the second biggest party in the polls in Holland. Normal people vote for my party, as normal people vote for your party. And if those people who are often, and their party labeled, especially by some of the press, and also certainly outside of your own country, labeled as xenophobes or racist, and they see that it's not only not the case, which of course they already know from themselves, but they see that also in other countries there are similar parties that are fighting for the same issues that are also unpopular and not at the fringe of the political spectrum. Then I'm sure it will have also an effect that it will broaden our message, and we can get stronger on whatever way we would or would not work together. But the image would be something that could not be ignored, that normal parties, tough parties, but normal parties that are getting very popular and strong will find one another and wherever they can work similarly together.
One issue which is problematic at the moment in Switzerland, which is controversial, is the free movement of people and Schengen. Today, if I'm not mistaken, the Netherlands have vetoed the entry of Romania and Bulgaria into Schengen.
Yes.
What is your position towards it?
Well, that indeed is a very wise decision of our government. Those two countries should, I believe, never have become member of the European Union. As a matter of fact, before I started my party, and I was still a single member of parliament in a one-party group, before we got 24 seats as we have today, I voted against the accession of Romania and Bulgaria to the European Union. And so I believe they should not ever have become a member. They should leave the European Union and certainly also not become a member of the Schengen Treaty, which would have enormous results when it comes to well, the immigration of those people to the Netherlands and other Western societies. So I'm very happy. Unfortunately, it perhaps will happen in a few years or maybe a year later. But the longer we can wait to do that, the better.
Bah, je répondrai là en français, ça donne aussi quelque chose pour les médias français. Schengen est un échec, on s'aperçoit que les Français et les Italiens se renvoient comment on appelle ça, le pierre noir, hein. C'est comme dans le jeu, là, c'est celui qui a la mauvaise carte finale, hein. Alors on essaie de les renvoyer. Les Italiens n'ouvrent des dossiers que d'une manière parfaitement lacunaire, limitée dans le nombre par jour. C'est un scandale absolu parce que Schengen ne fonctionne que sous la condition que tous les pays jouent le jeu. Alors évidemment, les pays qui jouent le jeu, c'est la Suisse par exemple, c'est la Hollande je pense, l'Allemagne, les pays du Nord plutôt. Alors parce que bon, il y a une bureaucratie qui fonctionne, ils sont précis, ils font les choses, ils ouvrent des dossiers. Alors vous avez des milliers de dossiers qui sont ouverts en Allemagne, puis dans la frontière extérieure de Schengen, par exemple en Grèce ou en Italie, vous avez quelques centaines. Hein, parce qu'évidemment, on envoie le problème plus au nord. Alors ça ne peut pas fonctionner de cette manière. Ensuite, au niveau sécurité, si ça avait vraiment été efficace, ça saurait. On a payé très cher pour notre participation, en tout cas la Suisse, à ce système. On nous avait dit que ça coûterait 7 millions par année. Ouais, on en est maintenant, après 5 ans, à 250 millions. C'est presque 10 fois le prix qu'on nous avait annoncé. Pour quel résultat? Le SI2, là, ce fameux système de sécurité globale avec cette donnée centrale, ne fonctionne toujours pas. Alors pourquoi l'argent du contribuable est jeté par la fenêtre? Donc là, alors on a une vision à peu près similaire. Schengen, actuellement, si c'est comme ça que ça fonctionne, il vaut mieux l'abandonner et puis réintroduire des contrôles. Et je prends l'exemple du Danemark, qui, malgré la pression, il y a tout le monde qui les a critiqués, mais enfin, a essayé de réintroduire un semblant de contrôle aux frontières, parce qu'un pays souverain doit pouvoir maîtriser les flux migratoires et le contrôle à ses frontières. Quant à la libre circulation, observez bien ce qui se passe en Europe actuellement. Vous avez une fonte des classes moyennes. Vous avez une augmentation des working poor. Parce que vous concurrencez les plus pauvres avec plus pauvres qu'eux. Et vous déplacez des masses de gens. Et finalement, les gens ne peuvent plus vivre décemment dans leur pays sur leur salaire. Regardez le Portugal. Alors, l'entrée dans l'Union européenne, youpi, tout le monde a jubilé. Le pays est maintenant riche. Ah ouais? Maintenant, le Portugal est trop cher pour ses citoyens. Alors, j'ai parlé avec pas mal de Portugais, j'y suis allé même en voyage, qui me disent, mais avant, on était pauvre dans un pays pauvre, on ne ressentait pas trop la pauvreté. Maintenant, nous sommes pauvres dans un pays riche. Alors là, on la ressent, alors très fortement, parce qu'on fait que du lèche-vitrine. On n'a pas les moyens d'entrer dans le magasin. Et c'est des salaires de 500 € par mois. Quand vous regardez le taux de chômage actuellement en Espagne, ils ont fait entrer énormément de Maghrébins pour les sous-payer. Et puis maintenant, ils font quoi? Avec la crise et le chômage. C'est des problèmes qu'on ne résout pas de cette manière. Donc moi je suis pour des cordons sanitaires. La frontière, c'est comme la peau d'un corps humain. Ça respire, mais ça protège. Et personne n'aurait l'idée d'enlever sa peau. Parce qu'il est fou s'il fait ça.
And this, if I may add, is also one of the issues of the lack of the nation state. You cannot, as a member state of Europe, you cannot decide freely to act on your own borders, to control your own borders again. Whereas, as Oscar said so rightfully before, what the Italians did, what happened before, what the French did, is a total mess. Why can we not decide before having some kind of okay from a European Commissioner that has no democratic value at all, that cannot be controlled by anybody, that cannot be influenced by anybody? It's ridiculous that we cannot decide to control our own borders. You see the lack of nation state as well when it comes to the whole crisis with Greece today. I mean, there are governments, even my own government that I'm supporting, but certainly I'm not supporting on this issue, is giving billions of euros to Greece, whereas the country has lied before almost everything when it comes to economics, where they made a total mess of everything, and we are spending once again money and money to corrupt a country. Whereas we forget what we have to do in our own nation state. We have in Holland today a program that we have to cut 80 billion of euros in the next 4 years, whereas at the same time we spend billions of euros to countries like Greece. Once again, why can we not decide not to do it, and we have to also put into form with the European Union, whether it's commissioners or the Council of Ministers. So this all comes back once again to what are we allowed to do, control borders, spend money to countries that we should have spent in our own country. We are fading away in a body without identity called the European Union, and we should fight back to be responsible and autonomous again in our own countries. And I cannot say it so nice as you said in French about your skin, but this is exactly how I feel it as well.
A question to both of you. We're here today because you, Mr. Wilders, were not allowed in Switzerland. But Switzerland, as Oscar reminded, is not part of the European Union and has direct democracy. Does that mean that direct democracy and be out of the European Union is not enough?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that I was not allowed to enter Switzerland. No. This is a difference from the United Kingdom, where the federal government decided for crazy reasons, and luckily they were overruled by the UK courts, that I was not allowed to enter. I think if I would go to Switzerland, I hope at least that I was allowed to enter. The problem was that in the city of Oscar, in the county of Oscar, I was not allowed by some politicians to speak, but you know it better than I do. I don't think I was rejected by the government.
He couldn't, even the mayor couldn't forbid him, because this is against our law and our constitution. No, he only denounced the booking of the city room, so we had no room. That's the way they do it. And invoking the security, we can't guarantee security, so we don't leave you this room at disposal. That was the way they did it. Because he will be the first to say how democratic he is, how courageous he is, and so on. But you see, it's hypocrisy.
But it took place in a direct democracy country.
Yes, but that we call the void. That's out of the will of the people. You can vote about that if they play it on that way. So we have to find a city major which is from the SVP, and an owner of the room which is an SVP, and so on. The next time I will do it like that. But in the Valais we are a minority. Our party is not so big in the Valais. In the other cantons where we have the power, it wouldn't have been like that.
Herr Freysinger, Sie haben ja dann versucht, einen Ersatzraum zu finden. Einen privaten Besitzer. Können Sie uns erzählen, was da für Drohungen dann aufgetreten sind, dass er dann auch letztlich zurückgezogen hat?
Ja gut, also dieser islamische Zentralrat hat dann telefoniert und ihm dann schon mal Angst gemacht, was er denn da für Folgen zu gewärtigen habe, wenn er uns jetzt da den Saal zur Verfügung stelle und so weiter. Und sie haben dann auch gedroht, sie kämen dann massiv da zum Demonstrieren. Und das Problem war, der hatte am selben Abend eine Hochzeit mit 120 Gästen zum Abendessen plus Aperitif. Und jetzt haben das Ehepaar hat plötzlich Angst bekommen, weil da diese Drohungen waren. Und das Ehepaar hat dann gesagt, ja gut, ich meine, dann überlegen wir uns, ob wir jetzt die Hochzeit da machen. Das wären natürlich einige tausend Franken gewesen, die er verliert. Naja gut, ich habe es dann aufgegeben. Er war in einer Zwickmühle, er wusste nicht mehr, was tun. Und die Polizei, die hat dann ihm dann auch noch verständlich gemacht, wenn es dann Schäden gäbe, dann müsste er vielleicht noch dafür bezahlen. Ja gut, dann war es einfach dem guten Mann zu viel. Okay, ich kann ihn auch verstehen. Aber der Druck war nur indirekt. Es war immer so gemacht, dass man ja eigentlich, dass man den Leuten nichts vorwerfen kann. So wird das eigentlich gehandhabt. Aber ich finde es scheinheilig.
Would you advise the Netherlands to step out of the European Union?
I would advise every people, every land of the United Europe to step out. That's absolutely clear for me. And to take to a model like Switzerland, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Wilders?
Would I advise Switzerland to become a member of the European Union? No, I would not advise them to...
Would you say the Dutch have to step out of the EU?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that at the time, but as you know, I believe that we should have a different European Union. We should have a European Union where we have maybe one commission. I believe in the European Union, if it has to be there, how it started in '57. When it was really not only economical cooperation, with one commissioner that is in charge of economical affairs, with no parliament, every decision is made. Every parliament of every nation state has a red card on every issue, so nothing on a different way. And we should, therefore, we can spend 10% of the money, maybe 5% of what we are spending now in the European Union. So I want another European Union, as it started. I mean, this is far away from it today, but maybe we should look into the fact what it one day would mean for the Netherlands if we would, A, be a member currently as how it's going with Greece and everything today, and B, being not a member of the European Union. Once again, I'm not saying that we should step out of the European Union, but I would be very interested to see what it politically, economically, on all the different issues would mean for Holland if we would not be a member of the European Union, to make sure what we would be in for before making a decision. Because indeed, I mean, if you look at Switzerland, it is a success.
Maybe the United Europe should join Switzerland. Better idea.
What is your message, both of you, what is your message to the Muslim citizens of Europe, those who have a nationality from a European Union country or from Switzerland and who are Muslims?
Yes. Well, my message is very easy, very clear. If you are in Europe or in the Netherlands today and you adhere to our constitution, to our laws, to our values, then you are welcome to stay. You're equal as everybody else, and we hope you have a very good time raising your kids and working and everything. There's no difference to you to anybody else. But if you overstep as I always say, if you cross the red line, if you start acting according to Sharia, by genital mutilation or acting like from jihad or whatever, and if you act against our constitution, against our laws, if you commit crimes, which once again the majority don't, but if you look at the statistics, they are overrepresented in an enormous way, then you have a problem. And then you can lose your stay and your welcome in our free societies. And because the problem is so enormously, and because I believe that even though I have nothing against the people, I have nothing against any people, against anybody, but I have something against the Islamic ideology, which is an ideology of hatred and of inequality. If you are not a Muslim, if you are Kufa, you have a very hard time. That we should, for that reason, stop the immigration from people from Islamic countries. Once again, not because Muslims are bad people, but because we are, once again, I'm very much in favor of what the Germans call a Leitkultur. I'm not one of the guys. The biggest disease in Europe today is the cultural relativism, the idea that the liberals and the leftists put into our heads that all cultures are equal. Well, let me tell you, they are not. And if you agree with that concept, if you adhere to our values and don't act in a wrong way, you are welcome to stay. And if you don't, you are not. It's as easy as that.
Je suis absolument d'accord avec cette position. Il y a un problème de parallélisation de société qui est beaucoup plus fort en Hollande que ce qu'il est chez nous. Mais si vous créez des ghettos culturels, où finalement, je vois qu'en Allemagne, l'état de droit cède parce que les policiers, par exemple à Kreuzberg, doivent être d'origine musulmane ou turque, parce qu'il ne peut pas y avoir un policier allemand qui agit dans ces quartiers. Alors j'ai l'impression qu'on va vers quelque chose qu'on ne va plus pouvoir contrôler. On ne peut pas paralléliser des sociétés comme ça et croire que ça va donner une société harmonieuse. C'est une société disharmonieuse. Donc c'est pour cette raison que la première des exigences qu'on doit avoir, c'est que la loi civile est au-dessus de la loi religieuse. J'ai fait un débat contre ce fameux Blanchot du comité central islamique, à RENA, l'émission que vous connaissez bien, la plus importante suisse-allemande, et quand le gars il me dit, au milieu du débat, la lapidation des femmes, non mais c'est pas un problème juridique, c'est une question d'opinion religieuse. Alors écoutez, moi j'ai un problème avec ce monsieur, parce que c'est un problème juridique d'abord, on ne jette pas des cailloux sur les femmes chez nous, c'est comme ça. Et puis, quelle que soit son opinion religieuse, d'accord, c'est là où on a un problème. Et il commence avec des petites choses. Les cours particuliers pour les petites filles, pour déjà les habituer. Hein, il faut déjà la ségrégation des sexes, parce que la femme doit avoir un rôle de soumission, puisque c'est comme ça dans le Coran, etc. C'est des petites choses comme ça. Et vous additionnez tout ça, et il y a une sorte de prise en otage de la société civile. Et ça ne va pas. Donc, la charia... elle n'est pas compatible avec l'état de droit. Je vous rappelle l'arrêt REFA 2002 de la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. Ce n'est pas moi qui l'invente, c'est la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme qui le dit. Ce n'est pas compatible. Donc voilà où est le problème.
Okay,
we have to, yes.
Yeah.
We need some time to,
Yes, we should.
Short question.
Yes, a short question.
You heard what Oscar Freysinger told about the violence threats in Switzerland of some Muslim organizations and of some Muslims. Do you think their tactic succeed, that we lose our freedom with this violence threats and the people?
yes, but unfortunately not only with violent threats. There is a real jihad and there is a legal jihad. And certainly it works. Intimidation works. Always it works. And it's up to us. I believe that is one of the reasons that Oscar is here today, that he's fighting the intimidation by people who are using non-democratical means, which is threats to restaurant holders or anything else. So unfortunately it's working, but it's for people who stand up, for brave people, not to give in to that. Unfortunately there's also, like I said, another jihad. It's a legal jihad. You see it all over the world now. You see it happening to so many people, not only to me. I hope you have not experienced it. Maybe you did, but to take people to court, either to civil courts or to penal courts. Once again, I was in Canada not so long ago. You see there the journalists, they have even worse hate speech laws than in Holland. They also have these committees that decide if a journalist is saying something rightfully or not, or if you're saying Islam or Islamism, or you can be taken to committees before you are taken to court. And you see that people use self-censorship, that they ask questions, even journalists, because they're afraid to lose their license, or being sued, because if there is a verdict against you in such a committee, you can be sued, not only taken to a criminal court, but you can be sued in a civil court. And you see it in so many countries happening. You see it happening in Europe, you see it happening in Canada, you see it happening in Australia where it's happening. I mean, in Switzerland, Oriana Fallaci, one of my authors I admired so much, was taken to court. Luckily she never went there, and unfortunately she died. But it happened. So this is exactly what we have to stand up against by not only changing our laws. I'm very much in favor of some kind of First Amendment in the whole free West, but also not giving in to the people who use tactics of threat and violence. They may and they shall never win. Thank you so much.
Thank you.